Fáilte over Cóide, you're welcome indeed to another edition of the programme. Well, this week we're coming to you from Knock, Ireland's National Marian Shrine, which celebrates the 140th anniversary of the apparition this year. And of course, a number of events are being planned to mark the occasion. So it could be an ideal opportunity for you to come and visit one of Ireland's top tourist attractions. Father Richard, it's a very much more relaxed Knock Shrine compared to this time last year. Looking back now, your thoughts now on the Pope's visit here?
Looking back, it's kind of like one of these dreams that you have. Did that actually happen? But you're right. This year is a lot calmer than last year in terms of the visit of Pope Francis. Last year, at this time of the year, we had to. It became public that Pope Francis was going to visit Knock, so we went into overdrive in terms of organisations and meetings about meetings and all the rest of it. So it was extremely hectic. The most intense period I've ever experienced in my life, naturally enough, because it was such an important visit.
This year, another important year for Knock Shrines, the 140th anniversary of the apparition.
That's right, 140 years ago, on the 21st of August 1879, the apparition took place at 8 o'clock on a Thursday evening. And so this year we want to celebrate that, 140 years, and all that has happened from that time to this. So we have a lot of programmes and a lot of celebrations mapped out for the year that can be found on our website and indeed here at the shrine when people visit. So we hope that people will become part and parcel of the celebration, to enjoy it, to come and visit and take part in what's going on here. It's a celebration as well of the people, the parishioners, people that have worked here, people that have come here, and people that have made Knock what it is today.
There's been tremendous work done here at Knock Shrine over the years on all fronts. What about the future now and plans for the future of the shrine?
Well, we are thinking ahead all the time, and we actually, believe it or not, thinking towards our 150th celebration, which is only in 10 years' time, if you want to say. So there are ideas and projects in mind, but first of all we have to finish what we've done in terms of fundraising, what we have accomplished here. Overall, between Witness to Hope and Together in Faith, which was the latest project, a €6 million project for the papal visit and for refurbishing the old church, etc., etc., etc. We have about €2 million left to raise in that. So altogether it has been a €20 million project. So we need to kind of take our breath, excuse me for a minute, we need to take our breath just to sort of come to terms with what has happened. But we do have plans for the future, all right, and in time, in the fullness of time, as they say.
This is the Church of St. John the Baptist. It was built in 1828, so it has been here for 50 years before the apparition. Ironically, the inscription on the external wall here says, "My house will be a prayer for all nations." So that was really prophetic, because we all know what happened here in Knock on the 21st of August 1879. So this was the parish church that all the witnesses would have attended, and this was the church that the apparition occurred at the gable wall outside of the church here, behind the altar that we're looking at here. And at the time of the apparition, the church would have been a lot smaller than it is now. The two side aisles that you see were added after the apparition because pilgrims started to come here. Would you believe within weeks of the apparition, pilgrims had started to come here to Knock? And the first organised pilgrimages came here in 1880, which was just the year after the apparition. And the beautiful high altar that you can see here was a gift from a pilgrimage that came from Cork in 1880. So it is one of the older features in the church. There is a very rich history here attached to the parish church. And in 2018, the church underwent some conservation work in order to preserve it for future generations. And as you can see, the work that has been done here is stunning. You'll notice that the Stations of the Cross, which have been in place here since 1910, they were all conserved by a specialist conservator called Owen Dalton. And when you look closely at them, you'll see that all the vivid colour that was in them originally and that perhaps we didn't take for granted over many, many years has all been brought back to life. And I think it's important that we would preserve the church because it's so close to the apparition, but also it's where all the witnesses would have come as parishioners. They'd have come for baptisms, for First Holy Communion, for marriages. So really the church here has been at the heart of the village of Knock since 1828.
I'm fascinated by the lovely Harry Clark windows that are in the old parish church here as well.
Aren't they just stunning? The one that you're looking at behind the high altar is the woman at the well. And that was done by Harry Clark himself. The light that comes through that is absolutely stunning. And then we have the equally beautiful window of Our Lady of Knock, which was done by Harry Clark's studio. So it's a little bit later. It was done in the 1920s.
Over 1.5 million people come to Knock each year. The highlight, of course, is a visit to the magnificent Basilica. Noreen, we're here in the Basilica. This was built around 1976.
That's correct. It was built in 1976. It was dedicated at the time to Our Lady, Queen of Ireland. And then when Pope John Paul II came to visit Knock in 1979, he elevated it to the status of Basilica. And it was one of the major projects that Monsignor James Horan was involved with here in Knock. As you can imagine, Knock attracts over 1.5 million pilgrims per year. So from the time of the apparition, pilgrims started to come here within days of the apparition. So Mass would always have been outdoors because the parish church that we've already visited was quite small. And somewhere was needed to give pilgrims some comfort and somewhere dry to come. And would you believe that the Basilica actually covers almost an acre of ground? So it is a huge building. The architecture of it, you can see the spire for miles around. It really is an iconic building and a very modern building. The Basilica was 40 years old in 2016 and a major redevelopment project was undertaken in the run-up to that. And as you can see, it's absolutely beautiful. It has been described as aesthetically beautiful and spiritually uplifting. And I think that's very, very true to say. And perhaps one of the most uplifting things that you will see here in the Basilica is our wonderful Apparition Mosaic here behind the sanctuary.
Looking at it, this mosaic, your first impression, you think it's an actual painting till you actually get close to it. Yeah.
When you get close to it, you'll see there's 1.5 million pieces of smalty or mosaic glass in them. So it's 85% Venetian glass, 10% mosaic and 5% gold leaf. So 1.5 million pieces. It was the work of the illustrator P.J. Lynch. He's an Irish illustrator, and the actual mosaic work then was carried out in Italy by Trevisanuto. They would be artisan mosaic makers and they would be famous for a lot of the work that they've done around the world, including the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. So the work in Italy took 8 months. And once all the work was done there, they laid it out in their local hall, quite similar to the night of the apparition. The local people came in to look at their work before it was shipped to Ireland. And it came to Ireland in 300 pieces and then was inlaid in hand here behind the sanctuary.
Now, another unusual feature about the Basilica, the Stations of the Cross, they're quite unusual, aren't they?
They're stunning, aren't they? They're the work of Ger Sweeney, who was based in Westport here in County Mayo. And they are stretched linen. They're 2.8 metres square, would you believe? So they are actually very, very big. And as you look closely at them, they are in a very modern style. But as you move through each of the stations, closer and closer to the crucifixion scene, you'll see that the images get much, much darker. And I think really and truly they're in a fabulous location here. They're 4.5 metres up from the ground, but they really do transcend the space. And when you walk into the Basilica, they nearly seem to move away from the wall. So they are a great talking point for visitors to the church here, but also aren't they a wonderful way to contemplate the Stations of the Cross? Because Absolutely. I think it really is brought to life. We're used, as you say, to seeing much more traditional type stations, but really and truly you are taken by each of the images, and particularly, as I say, when you move closer to the crucifixion scene, they are much starker and you are more in tune with what actually happened to the Lord in his passion.
You've had a new addition to the museum lately, since the Pope's visit.
We have indeed, Henry, and it's a really popular exhibit. I have to say, people are coming in their droves to see the chair that Pope Francis sat on when he came here last August. It was especially designed for Pope Francis, and being the humble man that he is, we felt it was really important that the chair be humble in its design as well. And it is. It takes its inspiration from the three-legged stool, which was in every rural house in Ireland, over 100 years ago, and indeed in the year of the Knock apparition in 1879. It's on this chair that Pope Francis sat in silent prayer in the Apparition Chapel. And, it wasn't started off a very wet day, but thankfully by the time he arrived to the village, it had stopped raining. And, the atmosphere all over the grounds, you could have heard a pin drop, just the complete quietness and silence that came over the hundreds and thousands of people. I think 45,000 people came to Knock to see Pope Francis. So it was a very important and special occasion for us. We also have the chair that Pope John Paul II sat in. That was donated to Knock by Seamus O'Hara from Swinford. Seamus went to Rome on holidays in 1976, and while there he was very impressed with the chair that Pope Paul XI sat in. And when he came back to Ireland, he decided he was going to commission somebody to make a chair like that to be presented to Knock. So it was made in Navan in County Meath, and Seamus presented it to Monsignor Horn in 1976. Now, Monsignor Horn, being the ingenious planner that he was, got his head thinking, and he put the chair into safe storage, and he took it out then for Pope John Paul on the 30th of September in 1979. So we have the two chairs side by side, and they're quite different in style, design. So I'm enjoying listening in the museum, listening to people compare and contrast the two different styles.
This is where the story of Knock, as we know it, began on a wet Thursday evening on the 21st of August, 1879. This is the gable wall where the apparition took place here in Knock. On that evening at about 7:30, Margaret Byrne came from a house located where the Basilica is at present, and she came to lock the church. Now, as she made her way home, she thought that she may have seen something at the gable wall, but she wasn't quite sure. It wasn't quite dark at 7:30. And then half an hour later, her sister Mary and the priest's housekeeper, Mary McLaughlin, made their way along a laneway that ran parallel to the gable that we see here behind us. And that's when they realised that this miraculous vision had actually taken place here at the gable. So they did what any of us would do. They went and they gathered their friends and their neighbours, and they gathered here in the pours of rain for 2 full hours. Now, what they saw was Our Lady, as you can see behind me, with her eyes raised to heaven. She was wearing a golden crown with a rose at its centre. To her left, and slightly in the shadows, was St. Joseph, who seemed to have his head bent in prayer, showing respect and reverence for her. And then we see St. John the Evangelist, who appears to be preaching or saying the Mass. And Patrick Hill, one of the young witnesses, himself and John Curry, they crossed the wall, unlike the rest of them. Can you imagine? All the adults were leaning and praying against the wall, and these two small fellas, one was 12, one was 5, they crossed the wall to get a little bit closer. And Pat actually said that he could see the writing in St. John's book, even though he couldn't make out what exactly the words are. But what's unique to our apparition here at Knock was the appearance of the Lamb on the altar, standing in front of his cross and surrounded by a host of angels. So the Eucharist and the Mass are represented here in Knock. Scripture is represented through St. John the Evangelist. And as I said, it lasted for 2 hours in the pours of rain. The witnesses, there were 15 official witnesses, although most of the people of the village would probably have seen it, but 15 gave their testimonies. The eldest lady was Bridget Trench. She was 74. And Bridget, ironically enough, was the only one who gave her testimony in Irish. And we think that Irish was the spoken language of the day, but all the others gave their testimony in English. And Bridget moved forward. Can you imagine an old lady of 74 on her knees for an hour and a half saying the rosary? She moved forward. She was completely absorbed in Our Lady, and she tried to touch Our Lady's feet. And she said in her testimony that when she did, the vision moved up the wall, so she couldn't feel anything, even though they had human form. The ground underneath the figures and the gable wall behind them was completely dry, even though they were all soaked to the skin. And she did say as well that if she'd realised that they wouldn't be there forever, she'd never have left, it just shows the deep, deep faith and devotion that the people of the time had to Our Lady and to the Rosary.
The Hub is a centre for all young people, so it stands for Hear, Understand, Believe. And it's a place really that young people can come and feel like they belong, feel like they have a place in Knockshine, and to give them a positive experience of Knock. We do so much here in the hub. So we open the doors of the hub in July, and we run summer programs. So we have a drop-in centre for teens and young adults. This is it, we're actually here, where they can just come and maybe have a cuppa and a chat and explore their faith and kind of ask the questions maybe that they're too afraid to ask elsewhere. We also have a kids club, so that's for kids aged 5 upwards, where we do the gospel of the day, we do arts and crafts, songs, dance, real high energy and loads of fun. In July we have 2 summer camps. We have our own Knock Youth Ministry camp, and that's for young children aged 7 to 11. And we also run the Michaela camp for girls, which is for girls aged 11 to 13, and that's in memory of Michaela McReevy. We also run a summer camp in August as well, and it kind of leads into the highlight of our year, the week of the novena. So that runs in August, and then our final moment for the summer is our family day, which happens on the Sunday throughout the novena. And that's a great day, because it's a great day for families to come together and celebrate everything that is family, to explore their faiths together in a fun and a very vibrant way. So we have loads to do on our family day. We have drumming workshops, we have kite making, we have face painting, we have EWTN are doing a workshop on film making, and so much more. So it really is a place full of energy, full of fun, but full of friendship and faith. And I think that's really, really important, that when a young person comes to Knock, that they get to experience that they get to experience their faith in a very real way. One programme that we run in particular that allows young people to do that is the VAX programme. And when you come to Knock Shrine during the summer, you'll notice young people going around in these vibrant orange hoodies. And you might think, what's that all about? But they're our volunteers. They are young people that have taken time throughout their whole summer to come here, to help the pilgrim, to be here and to serve the pilgrim in whatever way that they may need it. Whether that's just to greet them with a friendly smile, or whether it is to get a wheelchair for them. And it's something that young people take so much from. You know, the feedback from the young people themselves is they get so much from actually coming here and living out their faith in a very real way and experiencing God's love, which is so, so important for our young people today.
We currently employ about 200 people overall. I would say 120 of those would be permanent staff throughout the whole year. And then we take on the balance throughout the season, which would run from about, say, mid-April to mid-October. So we take on a lot of seasonal staff during that period when a lot of the pilgrims and visitors come in volume to the shrine. We have an office out at the airport, one person, but we like to keep a presence there, especially with people coming and landing at the airport. It's the first point of contact.
Of course, the Monsignor Horan connection is always...
Yeah, well, we keep that connection going. The current MD at the airport was an ex-work colleague of mine as well, so we meet very frequently, and we like to keep developing the relationship very closely with the airport. It's very important for us. We have a very good caravan park facility very close to the shrine, just literally 5 minutes walk. We have about 58 spaces up there for caravans and mobile homes or RV type vehicles ready to come in, plug in, and with all the hotel and so forth around and the cafe, we have plenty of food and accommodation available otherwise.
John, advice to people, visitors coming to Knock, what kind of advice would you give them? Because it's such a vast complex.
It is a vast complex, but we'll hopefully be able to help them a lot more in the near future. We have currently a fairly good website, which if people go onto it, they can look at how to get here and the places, the key places to visit. We kicked off a website development project in February this year, and we plan to launch at the end of July. So there'll be lots of new links there to help people to get here and then understand what they can do and what they can enjoy while they're visiting the shrine.
Finally, what do you think the biggest challenge is facing you now in your role?
The biggest challenge, I think, is obviously managing the workforce on the site. It's a big workforce. That would be operationally one of the key challenges. also to keep coming up with new ideas, to bring visitors to the shrine. And I think the biggest challenge of all, and I think Father Richard would agree, is trying to ensure that we captured the younger generation and get them to come to Knock in the future as well. I think we're doing quite well, but we still have a lot to do. And it's one of our key goals is to try to bridge over to the youth and give them something meaningful to come to Knock for.
We've just gone over the 20 years and it's been a very interesting and challenging 20 years. We built up the business initially. Then we headed into recession. We came out of recession and we had a refurbishment there about 2 years ago for 350,000. And we're still embarking on another refurbishment now of the lounge and the restaurant to complete that. So we've done well, yes, and survived well over the years, yeah.
And how has the market changed over those years?
The market has changed. I suppose the market has grown and we've set out to extend the market and expand the market over the winter period with Christmas programs and New Year programs. We've got a lot of tourists coming in, a lot of repeat business now over the years, which are booking literally before they leave, and they've booked for next year straight away. So they're in the can for next year.
And how big an asset is Knock Airport to you here at the hotel?
Knock is good. It's growing now. There's a lot of business coming in from the UK, which was what it was originally, I think, in Monsignor Horne's head to do, was to bring people into Knock. Now, latterly, I suppose, there's been a lot more going out of Knock on holidays and they had to develop their market. But we've certainly developed our market coming in from the UK, and that's growing. It's grown very well last year and again this year. We're up this year on the UK business coming in through Knock Airport already.
Accommodation and facilities here, what are they like?
They're good. We've a great location. We're about 2 minutes from the shrine. We have 68 bedrooms. We have a 100-seater restaurant. We have 3 good meeting rooms, a small meeting room, a medium one and a large one. They'll take anything up to 150 theatre style, and they'll take about 100 people for a meal. So again, coaches on a Sunday that are coming up from Carlow or anywhere will come in here, have their meal and head back to Dublin or whatever.
Where would you like the future now for the hotel? Where would you like to see it go on?
I think in the future we've the refurbishment of the bedrooms done. We have the restaurant to do. I think we would need to look at expanding the hotel because there's a shortage of accommodation in Knock. So I think to grow your business,
have you the grounds for?
We have the grounds to go out the back if we needed to. Yeah, it's just getting the nod and getting it in place. But I think yes, there'll be several times during the year where we're full, in maybe say June, July, or August, and people haven't even thought of coming to Knock yet. And when they try to get in here, then they can't get in for weeks on end. This would be one of the biggest kind of negatives that I would get. We're always trying to get into your place, but we can't get in because you're always full.
Well, we wish you well, Brian, and congratulations on 20 great years here at Knock House Hotel.
That's great. Thanks very much.
And if people want to get more information,
they can get our website, knockhousehotel.ie. It's probably the easiest and the fastest way to get to us.
well, we hope you enjoyed our visit to Knock Shrine. It could be just the year for you to come as it celebrates its 140th anniversary. Now, don't forget, coming up after the break, we're heading over to Manchester to join Martin Logan, and there'll be a repeat of this programme on Saturday next at 8 o'clock. So until next week, slán go fóill.